Well, with the new ban list, it is time to talk about those rogue decks that few, if anyone else, are willing to talk about for taking on the coming meta. A lot of commentators feel that with the demise of Zodiacs, that this meta will be wide open with numerous decks ready to compete. While I do not fully agree with this idea due to deficiencies in the recent ban list, if this is the case, why are almost all of the commentators listing the same 6, 7 decks in their top decks of the format countdowns? Time to talk about 5 decks that can do something competitively without resorting to cheap hand theft like Trickstars or X-Sabers, or boring super loops involving a card that should have been limited to one if not outright banned in Firewall Dragon. With that, let's get started. Number 5. The first deck on this list fell a little in my eyes because Link Summoning did take away one of its biggest power plays, especially when going first. However, Cardians still remain a threatening deck with fantastic board breaking capacity when drawing only decently, and produce an almost automatic victory when drawing well. Cardians possess consistent non targeting ways of removing opponent threats, limiting the opponent's ability to counter. Unless your luck is trash, at its worst, Cardians will consistently be able to flood the board, putting up a number of obstacles for the opponent to get over while you set up future plays. However, as mentioned, Cardians is the most luck relevant deck in the game. Get good luck, no deck can beat it. Get bad luck, any deck can beat it. Fortunately, that luck aspect can be managed somewhat through smart deck design. This luck aspect, though, rears its head the most on the player's turn when going first, for setting up a first turn board without the ability to clear can be harder now, thanks to Link Summoning, because Double Shower is no longer available. However, if Cardians ever get a quality Link monster, oh boy, look out. Overall, I think a number of people stay away from Cardians because it is a brainy deck, and the chance to misplay if you're not a longtime veteran who's practiced a lot is rather high. Number 4. This next deck has an interesting characterization for new ritual decks over the last few years has received a lot of hype, starting with Necros, then to Cyber Angels, then to the newest entry in Vendreads. With all of this attention and hype, one would think that the best ritual deck since Necros broke onto the scene would have more traction. But sadly, alas, that has not been the case. So, what is it about Shinobirds that people run from? Their spirit aspect? Well, despite the concern of their spirit nature, Shinobirds have a highly versatile response between Baron and Baroness, producing non-targeting and non-destruction based mass removal. This type of removal and versatility opens the door for strong OTK capacity and producing multiple negatives for the opponent when victory is not immediately achieved. The spirit aspect of Shinobirds is actually not much of a liability when designing the deck properly, due to the ability to use spirits from the graveyard to ritual summon and the tokens that are summoned when the ritual is returned to the hand. You can use the tokens for defense, but and now in Link summoning, you can even use them to make Link's plays. In fact, Xenobirds can combine very effectively with Melodious as a defensive agent, especially since the release of Back to the Front, which heavily aids the defensive strategy associated with Arya. While the spirit issue is somewhat overblown as a weakness, the biggest problem of the deck is, not surprisingly, a lack of consistency, for it is a ritual deck, and with Baron and Baroness being level 8 monsters, it does only have access to pre-preparation of rites instead of pre-preparation of rites and the newly semi-limited preparation of rites. However, despite the potential lack of consistency, Shinobirds are definitely a deck that can get it done when both played and designed appropriately. Number 3. You have to feel bad for this deck in the third position, for it just does not receive any real attention, continuously overshadowed by its more accomplished bigger brother, ABC. Yeah, it's Electromagnetic Warriors. In my opinion, EW has a better field spell than ABC in that it produces non-targetable, non-destruction monster removal both in an offensive and defensive capacity in addition to multiple pluses and extra deck playmaking thanks to its revive ability. It also has numerous pieces of negation and interruption available, in addition to multiple ways to swarm the field. Not only can it swarm effectively, but it can produce high attack point threats depending on the type of build that can board clear, creating meaningfully high damage opportunities, including OTKs. Despite Link Summoning putting the damper on some of the explosive advantages of its versatility, that versatility is still valuable, especially when dealing with Masterpiece decks. Outside of it being overshadowed thanks to ABC sucking all of the air out of the room for EWs, what are its problems? It really doesn't have a lot. The biggest issue with the deck is it can have some trouble breaking multiple negation boards, but most decks have that problem. Overall, EWs should be more popular and have a better track record of success than they currently do. Number 2. My number 2 deck is one of those decks that really should receive more attention, but its overall archetype demands hybridization. And due to the timing of its introduction, a number of players selected, in my opinion, the wrong partner, heavily limiting a lot of the efficiency of the deck. The archetype? Graydles. The incorrect hybridization? Kaijus. In my opinion, the correct hybridization for Graydles is Shadal. While Kaijus can play over almost any threat, they're too similar to Graydles in the capacity that they're almost completely reactionary and heavily depend on your opponent, in a sense, just going slow, and can't change the tempo or push the tempo on their own. This is especially true now with the loss of Slumber from 3 copies to 2 copies, and now from 2 copies to 1 copy. Shadalls produce speed, along with viable threats that force the opponent to respond, setting up Graydles, and while Winda and Shikanaga are certainly not the powerhouses they once were, they are still a force to be reckoned with at preventing the opponent from exploding and neutralizing their playmaking. The reality is, while Construct did justifiably get a lot of attention, Shadalls just aren't Construct. They have a lot of other weapons going for them. Shadalls are also no slouch when breaking boards, if an extra deck monster is on the opponent's field. This hybrid also supports a variety of strategies to remove threats via monster effect, spell effects, and trap effects. Finally, it can produce a multitude of different means to push tempo. So if this deck is so good, why does it not see play? As mentioned, most people have abandoned Graydles due to their general failure in kaiju hybrids, and a number of players unjustifiably view Shadalls as DOA until Construct is unbanned. Obviously, the biggest weakness for this deck is facing down cards that shut down effects that can activate in the graveyard. So clearly you need to ensure that you build secondary strategies. Also, the deck can be a little costly due to the aggressive suicides of Graydles into opponent monsters, which can suck up life points. Before moving on to number 1, I will give an honorable mention to Dinomists. The reason Dinomists aren't on this list is the simple fact that I think they do receive enough attention. They don't receive enough overall attention, but they're not as obscure as I think some of the choices on this list are. If they received less attention, they would most definitely would have been on this list. I think Dinomists have heavily underperformed, and I think most of the reason behind that is because of less than optimal build, and they're not popular. With that, moving on to number 1. The number 1 rogue deck that I feel is receiving a lot less attention than it should is Spiral. Whoa, no, not those spirals, but this spiral. Spiral Mythic Radiance Dragon. Due to the normal monster standing of Spiral, it has access to one of the best field spells in the game, and Pacifist, that, if not removed from the field, makes it almost impossible for your opponent to win. With access to Pacifist, one can search out a monster effect negator and a single card destruction element that can be activated from the hand under rather easy to achieve conditions, creating significant interruption for your opponent. Radiance Dragon itself, when paired with Pacifist, is a consistent and straightforward from the deck summons of a 2900 attacker that can rather easily jump to 3400 with a certain equip spell. The deck also has strong synergy with Paleozoics, providing gap filling and other attacking strategies to remove opponent threats. What holds Radiance Dragon back? It is a control deck that does not have a huge explosive plays. Basically, not a lot of people view this deck as sexy because it just doesn't have 5+ minute turns. It also can have a little trouble getting going when the field spell is not available. But the deck leaves a lot of room for smart tech choices to drive the duel when the field spell is not accessible. Overall, I feel that the biggest issue with this deck is poor front runner deck design, where players do not have quality response strategies when lacking the field spell and they're not going first. The design philosophy of a number of spiral builds is get pacifists on the field as soon as possible, even if it results in numerous potential brick cards in the deck, which is not the appropriate design. Because the simple fact is, you can play around passive, so you have to have additional threats that force your opponent into that quandary of, oh crud, I have to get rid of card A, but oh no, there's pacifist, and that'll screw me if I don't get rid of pacifist. If I don't get rid of pacifist, then card A will screw me. That's the right way, in my opinion, to design this deck. And I just don't think enough people who even play the deck design it that way. As mentioned, I think their mindset is as long as I get pacifists on the field as fast as possible, I'll be okay. And that doesn't work against people who kind of know what they're doing. Granted, this problem is not the archetype's fault. Design the deck right, and it can be devastating. So, those are the top rogue decks in the game that I feel aren't getting nearly as much attention as they should in a competitive environment that's supposed to be as wide open as so many people claim. This reality is unfortunate because it can be said that there is this follow the leader mentality in some parts of the Yu Gi Oh community where popular decks just get more popular and a lot of good, legitimately competitive other options are just forgotten. Well, that does it for me. So thank you for your attention and your time. I'm out.